My name is Susie Langhoff. I'm part of the admissions team in the School of Business, and I work most closely with our Master's of Science in Accountancy program. So if you are thinking about the program, or if you're going through the admissions process, or if you've already been admitted, you probably have already been connected with me in some way, shape, or form. But at the end, I'll make sure I share my contact information. So if there's something that you want to address on one-on-one, we can certainly do that. So with that, I'm going to share my screen. So most of you may know a little bit about the program already, but I'm just going to go over some overview here. So we're thinking about the MSA program here at Wake Forest. There are a couple things that really stand out about the school and about the program specifically. So number one, CPA pass rate for the past 20 years. That's usually what comes first to mind when you think about Wake Forest. We're really preparing you well for that test. However, every time I speak to faculty, they are very adamant that they do not teach to the test. They're just oftentimes preparing you to encounter certain topics, as well as preparing you to be a well-rounded business professional through the lens of accounting. So that's really the goal. With that, as far as the program, we accept all majors. So most of our students are coming in from an undergraduate accounting background. However, year after year, we have students that come from different majors. So statistics is one of our top majors, finance, another top major, economics. That being said, every once in a while we get an English or a psychology major in there. So just because your undergraduate degree isn't accounting doesn't mean that this isn't a program for you. So we talked about some of the main choices students make, the first or the three tracks. We'll go into those with a little bit more depth, but it's an opportunity for students that enter the program to really specialize, to be able to have that overarching accounting knowledge and that business acumen, but then focus in a little bit on the area of line of service that they're hoping to land after the program. Another thing to keep in mind is the career-focused nature of the program. So if you haven't already landed by the time that you join the MSA program, you have a really great career coaching team. We call their team Market Readiness and Employment, because they know so much about what's going on in the market, and they prepare you well for that recruiting process. And then finally, another important step to remember is that the program is STEM designated. We will talk a little bit about the analytics coursework that allow us to be able to make the program STEM designated, but that's incorporated into the curriculum regardless of your 2-semester or 3-semester track, as well as your learning track. So with that, we'll kind of go to that first decision that you make as an MSA student. And I think it's important for us to just take a beat there and realize that you make a decision when you apply to the program. First, that timeline track, and that's what we're going to talk about here, as well as your learning track. But just know those are decisions that give us a good idea of where your interests lie, but they're not set in stone. So oftentimes students will have really meaningful conversations with current students or alumni after they've gone through the application process and been admitted and even accepted their offer. And these things shift, they change. You do an internship and you might go, oh, I don't know if that's the route for me. So just know that when we're talking about this is all a little bit movable up until orientation. By orientation, we really want you to have that nailed down, so you have a really clear path forward. But just know that if you move through the application process and some of this stuff feels a little confusing, you feel like you have interest in multiple areas, we can help facilitate conversations that help clarify that a little bit. So with that, talking about the timeline option. So 2-semester versus 3-semester track in the MSA program. 2 semesters pretty straightforward. Students are going to be joining the cohort usually with a full-time offer, but not necessarily. A lot of times they are accounting students, accounting undergraduate students, I should say. And they might be doing on-time hiring, but just know that if you haven't fielded an offer at this point, you can still complete the 2-semester track. That's going to be fall coursework, spring coursework, graduation. And then most students will still opt to stay in Farrell Hall, sit and study for the CPA, and maybe even sit for the exam. It's a great time that's been set aside in the summer. A lot of times your start date for your professional role won't be until after that. So you really want to take advantage of that if you do plan to take the CPA, because it does, as you've probably heard, becomes more difficult once you start that full-time role. 3-track is a little different. So you still have that fall coursework, But pre-fall is going to take place in that summer section, and that's when you're going to be working with career coaches just to make sure that all of the parts of your recruiting process are put into place. So you're meeting, making sure your resume is up to standard, you're doing networking workshops, you're meeting with the coach one-on-one to be able to narrow down where you want to land, location-wise, line of service, specific employers. You're doing all that prep work in the summer with our team. That will come to a head right before orientation at Meet the Firms, and that is where you'll begin the contact with firms in the recruiting process for an internship. Students are usually completing their internship and completing the internship application process by October. So usually by October, our students know where they're going to be going for that spring semester, and they're taking advantage of that time doing office visits if necessary, but all alongside that fall coursework. Spring, if you're doing 3-semester track, is really going to be focused on that internship. So January to March, you don't come back to campus. You go to wherever you're hoping to land that full-time role to complete your spring busy season internship. And then you'll return to campus from March to May to do some additional coursework, 3 to 6 credit hours generally. Just like the 2-semester, your summer term is reserved for that CPA prep and maybe even taking a section of the CPA exam. Now you'll see CPA both here and here in 2-semester track. Just know that you can take the CPA outside of that. So sometimes students will finish fall coursework. They'll have enough credits to sit. They might sneak a section of the test in between that fall and spring semester. That's perfectly fine, but generally students just have this time set aside in the summer. So going back to 3 semesters, that fall will just be some final coursework for students with a December graduation date. Great. So foundational coursework. Again, a lot of times students coming into the program, if you're an accounting undergraduate major, chances are you've probably completed most of the foundational coursework. And so that's something you may not have to worry about coming into the program. Just know that if you do have coursework that you need to complete, what your options are, if you're going to take them at Wake, if you're going to take them at another accredited school, and we help you through that process. Again, if you're a non-accounting major, you might have some of these and not all of these. A good example is finance students. A lot of times they have most of these courses, just missing a tax class. And so we work with you to help fill those gaps. Something important, and I mentioned it at the top of our session, is an important change when it comes to foundational courses. So in the past, we can see this US GAAP accreditation. This is going to apply to mostly our international students, but this wasn't a special accreditation that we required for the Intermediate 1, Intermediate 2, and tax up to this point. So in the past, if you had taken Intermediate 1, Intermediate 2 at an international school, you would have to retake that at a domestic school that followed GAAP standards. I'm excited to announce that that has shifted, and so we've made an amendment to that standard. And so this is so new that I haven't even updated the slides yet. But as of now, we are accepting International Intermediate 1 and Intermediate 2 as satisfactory for the foundational coursework. So if you've already taken that at an international school, we will accept that as a foundational course that is satisfactory. We're working on tax. We're not quite there, but I will tell you, if you have questions about that tax GAAP standard, please feel free to reach out with me one-on-one, and we can definitely move through that evaluation process. So let's say you're admitted to the program, you're starting program in the fall. Core coursework, what does that look like? So core coursework are the courses that everybody takes, no matter what your track, no matter what your timeline. So these are those courses here. You'll see some electives. Oftentimes electives are going to be more for 3-semester students. Your 2-semester students, your schedules are pretty full. But if you perhaps have audit and accounting information systems already done, you may end up with a little extra space for electives. In the core coursework, something to remember is that we have the analytics focus. So regardless of track, every student is going to be completing 4 analytics courses, and that's what makes the program STEM designated. So these are the 4 courses that you encounter regardless of your timeline and your track. So just something to familiarize yourself with and just be aware that that's going to be upcoming in the curriculum. So learning tracks, I know that was a big question coming into this this session, so that's what we're really going to tackle here. Audit assurance, generally year after year is our most popular of the tracks. It's the largest of the three tracks. If we're thinking about size-wise in a class of 120, generally 36% of that will be audit assurance. Tax consulting is we call it our small but mighty track, and so there's a really great number of tax faculties. And across all three of these, we'll see what's called professors of practice. So you have a good variety of faculty that are coming from an academic background as well as from a practice background. So somebody who's practicing either recently or still practicing in a professional setting. And so they're bringing a lot of the concepts and technologies that are relevant now to the classroom. And you see that really, really quickly in tax because tax laws are constantly changing. So we have faculty that are aware of those changes and they are very on top of that to make sure that you're getting the most relevant curriculum. And then finally, financial markets and transactions. And it's a blend of finance and accounting. So oftentimes we'll see students that may be in a finance background or may have goals to be in more financial roles. However, they appreciate that lens of accounting and appreciate the ability to be prepared for the CPA and have that as a tool available to them later in their career. So we saw the core curriculum. I'm just going to run through some of the curriculum that you'll encounter in each of these tracks. So audit assurance is I would say the lightest of the three when we're thinking about specific courses that are required. You can see the different courses that are available in the audit assurance track. Tax is definitely our most robust of the three. And if anybody is looking for the recording of this, or even just these slide decks to look through this curriculum a little bit more in depth, I'll have my contact information at the end too, so I'm more than happy to share these resources. But as we kind of tick over to tax, you'll see this is the most robust of the two. And so 2-semester tax is intense, that's for sure. But you have really great faculty, as stated before, to be able to help you through that process. And then finally, financial markets and transactions. You can really see that cross-section between finance and accounting, as well as just that overall business acumen that you receive in the program. I think one more thing just to keep in mind when you're thinking about tracks and thinking about the decisions that you make about timeline, we can talk about the tracks. We can connect you with faculty. I think that's a great resource to be able to talk a little bit about what faculty are trying to impart on students when they're going through this curriculum. So if you are looking for that next step, the maybe in-depth explanation of what a specific class might look like, what the goal and objective after a class would look like, be happy to connect you with faculty. Or even let's say you go, I want to know more about this FinTech for the future of financial services class. We can get you a syllabus of that, and you can just take a look at on your own time and get a better sense of what students are walking away with when it comes to those specific courses. Another great resource to keep in mind is student perspective. Again, we can tell you about what faculty hope to impart on you coming out of the program, but nothing is going to quite give you the insight that a student will. So those are other connections that we can help make. So if you have questions about, how did you make a decision to come to the tax track? How did you make this decision to do audit assurance? Or if you like to speak to an alumni and say, are you glad that you did this? Or what other courses do you wish you would have taken in electives? Those are great insights that maybe I might not be able to answer, but I can get you to the right person. Great question. So I have a question. How many electives can we take each semester? It seemed like those in tax may not be able to take as many as others. You're absolutely right. Taxes, like I said, pretty robust, and especially if you're in the 2-semester track, you're going to be pretty much at max. 3-semester opens up a little bit of wiggle room. So if you think back to 3-semester, you have that spring internship, and then you have the second part of the spring semester that has 3 to 6 credit hours generally. You could fit some extra electives in there. You could opt for the 6 credit hours, maybe even a little bit more if there are specific electives that interest you. I will tell you that if you have a specific elective in mind, what I would recommend is to contact myself and I will get you in connection with what we call integrative student services. And ISS is led by Mary Knapp. She is all things outside of the classroom, and that includes helping with registration. So if there's something that you're really hoping to be able to experience on the electives side, she can help you work with the registration to make sure that that fits within your MSA experience. I mean, great observation, tax, because there are so many more required courses, you may be a little bit more limited than say a student that's going through the audit assurance track. Like I said, I know a couple of students have already gone through the admissions process, but if you haven't, I just want to offer the fee waiver code. Applications are completely online and we're on rolling admission. So generally, we say students receive a decision after all parts of their application are complete within 2 weeks. We try to do a pretty quick turnaround. But please feel free to use the code apply now to waive that application fee to get that process started. Okay. Question from one of our guests is, what kind of prerequisites should be completed before sending the application? So great question too, because I did let you know that that you can have some missing prerequisites prior to applying to the program. So very, very few times do we encounter students that have no prerequisites. It's not to say that we wouldn't consider a student that has no prerequisites. You could apply without any. However, you get it's more difficult to get a sense of what you're kind of signing up for at that point. Oftentimes, students have maybe just gaps in prerequisite. So they may have a statistics course that satisfies the business analytics, or they might have intermediate 1, or they might have just that intro accounting course. Financial accounting course. And so oftentimes what I recommend, and I'll go back to the list so we can kind of look at foundationals together. What I often recommend is if you are worried about the gaps in foundationals, to just touch base with me via email. I'm happy to take a look at unofficial transcripts even before you've applied to the program and just give you a good sense of where the gaps are. Oftentimes, like I said, there might be courses that are labeled differently at your school than what's listed here. A good example, like I said, is business analytics statistics. Or you might have a tax course that's not exactly labeled introductory tax. I think you get what I'm saying is it could be there. You could have satisfied, say, a finance course or another one of these courses and it not be the exact same name. So if that is a concern, I would always say, let's just look over your unofficial transcript and we can get a sense of what those gaps are. Again, it's not to say that you have to have 1 or 2 minimum before applying. It's not something we see every day. But if that is the case, if the person asking this question, you're looking at this list and you're going, I don't have any of these, then I think a good place to start is just a consult and we can talk through the program, talk through some of the courses that have inspired you to look into the MSA program, and then we can go from there. It's not a hard stop is I guess the final conclusion to that question. With that, I'm going to just pause on this slide. I know a lot of the content that I've talked about today has been geared towards reach out to me and we can connect one-on-one. Truly, I'm happy to look at foundationals. I'm happy to help create a map when it comes to how do you make the MSA program happen. That can be from a coursework standpoint. That can be about talking through scholarship. That can be, most of the time this is the first time that you're applying to graduate school. So there are no silly questions. I'm happy to help. Just because we look at an application all day long doesn't mean we expect you to know the application process. So I'm happy to help you navigate that. My contact information is below. Email is usually the best way to get a hold of me, but that's my cell phone too. So feel free to text or call if there's something I can help you with. But in the meantime, I hope everybody has a lovely evening, morning, afternoon, whatever the case may be for you. I appreciate everybody's time, and I hope to be able to connect with you more in the future. Thank you. Bye.